let's get this thing rolling. Talking about personalization today, but first I want to introduce myself. My name is Maranda Provance, and I'm the Director of Development at Mostly Serious, which is my day job, and I lead the technical team there. More on Mostly Serious in a second. In my free time, I'm spending most of it with my family and my pup, which are pictured there. And I definitely try to devote as much additional time as I can to being involved in local nonprofits, trying to make the tech community and local community a better place. And for the last decade, I've been primarily focused on diversity in tech. I mentioned already about the Springfield Women Technology Survey and Report event. Super excited about that, and I really hope that it helps everyone get better policies and benefits at their jobs and helps employers know how to attract and retain all of us. So Mostly Serious is where I work. We're a full-service agency with digital in our DNA. We craft thoughtful web solutions and marketing strategies for growing organizations. We definitely have strong roots in web development, so most of our clients come looking to us for a website, which we've proudly built on Craft CMS almost exclusively for the last 5 years. I won't focus a ton on the Craft CMS side of it for this audience, but I am giving this talk in Spain at the Craft Conference in about a month. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity to test the talk on you all. One other thing I wanted to mention about us too is that we've recently launched our first plugin on the Craft CMS marketplace called Promptly, which is an AI writing assistant tool. People more easily directly in Craft CMS with the help of AI and the writing assistant tool we've made. So today we're going to talk first we start with the basics. What is it? Ultimately find why or behind your strategy. We're also going to talk about getting it right. Should I switch the other mic? Okay, let's do it. Okay, good now. Okay, so we're also going to talk about how you get it right, because I'm sure we've all had personal experiences with AI and personalization just going wrong, being creepy or weird or just making you feel trapped. And then I'm going to talk about some real examples in Craft CMS, and I think that those examples will translate to whatever platform that you build on. So, starting with the what, the how, and the why. Over the last 5 years, Mostly Serious has seen an increased demand in personalization. Clients come to us having seen stats similar to this one. 71% of consumers expect companies to deliver personalized interactions. Stats like these leave businesses feeling like they're missing out if they don't use personalization. It's pretty compelling, right? Most things that we do don't move the needle by that much. So it's understandable why people want that. They're really looking for a little piece of that magic, but they often lack a clear vision of what they want, why they want it, or what it's doing for them or their users. So what is personalization? Generally speaking, it's the process of tailoring content and features to the individual needs of users. I want to break this down a little bit. We often hear the term personalization, but I want to distinguish it a little bit from customization. They're both doing similar things, tailoring content for users, but personalization is more automated and it's implemented by the system. Usually, this is done by AI or kind of recommendation engines behind the scene, but we'll also talk about some other ways to do it as well. Maybe they're maybe you're triggering on something like the user's role to show content or change the layout of the page for someone. Doing personalization in this automated fashion is easier for the user because they don't have to do anything. We're just automatically making the content, better for them. But it can lead to people feeling trapped or missing out on content that they might otherwise see if we didn't restrict them in that way. Customization, on the other hand, is changes that are chosen by the user. So the system in this instance gives the user options to make choices about the content that they see or the layout or function of the site. This version has a higher interaction cost, meaning users have to do something, and sometimes users are lazy. I'm lazy, right? But it does engender a more truly custom experience that they have more control over, which can be a benefit. For our purposes today, I'm going to talk about these kind of in the same vein and just use the term personalization going forward, but sometimes there's definitely gray area too between where personalization starts and then customization takes over. So we know what it is, but how do we do it? Really, it comes down to two simple steps at a very high level. First, you have to gather data about your user, and we'll go into detail about what kinds of data and how you might get that. And then it's a matter of changing the content and layout, which sounds simple when you put it that way, right? But it's not always so simple, and we'll talk about some ideas about how to make it happen. So first, we got to get data from our users. We can break down the kinds of data into demographic, behavioral, and contextual data. Demographic data is information specifically about a person, like their name, their age, their gender, their location, things that might go on an ID or a badge, something very unique to that person. Behavioral data is stuff that comes about from someone's actions. So maybe the products or the pages that they visit, how engaged they might be with your site, whether that's submitting a contact form submission or some other touch point on the site, or maybe things like how long they've been on the site, or if they're new or returning visitors. And then this last category of data is contextual, which are things that aren't directly tied to the user, things that could be like time of day or the user's device type. So how do we get this data? The first option would be to ask the user themselves. So if you have user accounts on your site, that's a really natural place to start collecting some of that data. I mean, at a baseline, you already have their name and their email address, but you could consider asking for some of these data points on the left to get things started. So the first thing that came to mind for me as an example of that is Stitch Fix. When you sign up to use their service, you go through a pretty in-depth quiz to get information on your size and personal preferences, types of clothing that you like. And then they use all that data that you gave them up front and personalize and recommend specific things to you over the time you use their service. So other ways to get data from users are to use personalization tracking tools. I haven't used any of these myself for this purpose, but I know places like HubSpot, Optimizely, and Dynamic Yield are pitching themselves as personalization engines, and some companies might have, I don't want to call it nefarious, but like more cryptic ways of pulling in data across other tools. So if you want to go that route, some of these might be able to help you there. I definitely, we'll get into this later, but you want to use that power with caution because I'm sure we've all been creeped out by whatever ads have been following us across the internet. Another type of system that you can use to help with this is a recommendation engine. And in this case, what you would do is gather behavioral data from your users. So tracking maybe if they viewed this product or that service, and sending those hits to a recommendation engine like Algolia, TensorFlow, or Salesforce Einstein. And then you can also just consider manually tracking user data. Again, if you're thinking about privacy and not sending sensitive data off to a third party, and especially if your need is pretty simple to personalize, maybe you're just collecting hits for products on your own and then making a few simple changes based on that data that you've manually tracked and stored for your users. So if we have our data, the next thing to do is make changes based on it, personalize the experience for your users. So I'm going to share a few examples of what other companies have done to provide inspiration here. And first up, we'll look at what people do to sell more products. I thought of a few things here that I've seen in terms of personalization with e-commerce, whether that's using AI to make product recommendations, allowing people to buy again, or targeting promotions. And all I had to do was go to the homepage of my Amazon account to see examples of all of these and more. So you see a few of these up here. I was searching for a book the other day, and right away they're telling me to pick up where I left off because I didn't buy it, right? Similarly, with this next category, these are things I've purchased before, and they understand that a lot of people seem to buy those a lot. And so they're recommending that I buy those again. And then, as I mentioned, I have a toddler. So my front page of Amazon is just littered with baby stuff. And you can see that here in some of these recommendations. I also noted on the left side, or on the far right side here, that they're trying to hook onto everybody's desire to get a deal, and trying to find personal things for me that are on sale right now that they can hook me with. So another reason you might want to use personalization is to improve functionality for your users or make things simpler or easier. One example that I noticed recently was with LinkedIn Premium, where they have this very customized sales funnel. And I didn't even look at all the plans yet, but I assume there are quite a few of them. And in my brain, I was thinking, I bet someone at LinkedIn thought people are struggling to pick the right plan for themselves. And so they created this really personal step-by-step quiz to figure out what people are the most interested in, and then automatically limit or tailor the plans that they offer to just 2, which is a lot easier to make a decision about than even looking at 3, 4, 5, or more. Another thing you could consider is providing quick links for a user based on their role. Or allowing them to continue where they left off in the case of Google Drive. Another thing I noticed recently is that they suggest some documents at the top, and it appears to be based on what I edited most recently. So this last category here, you can use personalization to better highlight important info that's specific to people. Algolia offers a personalized search functionality, so you can send them information about your users and what products, pages they visited, and you can see here that based on a specific user, because they've searched iPhone 11 before, those results get pulled up a little bit above other results, and that user might be more likely to need those things. Another example here is highlighting information based on the time of day. I took a look at YouTube Music. I probably should be using Spotify, but I've just been on Google Music for so long, and I don't want to lose my history, so don't judge me. But anyway, I noticed that when I was looking at this in the evening, they were pairing their recommendations to the potential vibe of nighttime, right? Low-key vibes, and they even have like a relaxed evening playlist that they're recommending to me. Another thing that we see pretty often in the B2B marketing space is the ability to serve a specific case study based on the user's industry. So if you have a call out that might highlight, 3 or 4 case studies, you can order the ones that are in that person's industry at the top, and you have a better chance at them clicking through to something that feels like it matters to them and what they go through. So we've talked about what it is. We've talked a little bit about how you might go about implementing it. But first, we need to find the why. We need to find a goal or a purpose behind you or your client's personalization strategy. So our clients started asking us about personalization maybe 3 to 5 years ago, and I think we've yet to have someone come in with a very clear idea of why they wanted it. Here's another quote that I saw that's super compelling. Personalized call to actions perform 202% better than basic CTAs. I mean, who wouldn't want that? So when clients see things like this, it's really easy to understand what piqued their interest, and it is our job to help them figure out why and what goal they're serving. So here's a few tips on finding the why, either for your company or for your clients. First, we want to identify your primary conversions, what things are going to make the most impact. Then we want to use the list I shared earlier to document all demographic, behavioral, and contextual data that we might be able to find about our user. And then we want to use those things to narrow into finding our user's primary differentiators. So a little bit more info on identifying primary conversions. We really want to think about what's going to make the most positive impact to the business and the user and start there. So we want to think about what moves the needle the most. If you're selling things online via e-commerce, definitely start there. Pretty much everyone agrees that if you have an e-commerce site, you're doing it to make some money, right? And that speaks directly to the bottom line. If you don't sell things online, generally what we think of as primary conversions are touch points or communication from the client or customer. So we generally think of that as form submissions, particularly like a contact form submission, or email clicks or phone clicks. But generally speaking, you want to personalize in ways that generate more conversions. Now, there are other reasons to do it too, like if you want to just create a better user experience for your customers, but generally I'd recommend starting here. So after you've got your primary conversions thought about, then you just want to brainstorm and think wide on the different types of data that you can collect about your user. And here are a few additional examples. Another time of day example might be a hospital highlighting the ER when urgent care is closed. Or, in the case of having a physical location, maybe when the business is closed, you might make the primary conversion point sending an email or submitting a form, right, rather than calling. In terms of weather, which would be a contextual thing, maybe promoting umbrellas on a rainy day. People often don't think about those things until they need them. And, when you can make something front of mind for people in their time of need, they're more likely to make a purchase. Another thing that I've noticed in regard to age, so again, I have a toddler, and this was my first go around with things. So I signed up for babysitter weekly emails about what to expect with my little guy. And of course, they take that opportunity in their free newsletter to promote some age-appropriate toys and baby gear that goes with the age that my kiddo's at. And then browsing history is another big one. Whole Foods is another company website that makes it super easy to buy again. In the context of groceries, it's super common to get the same things week after week, so they make sure to put that front and center for users. So we've taken a look at our primary conversions, and then we've gone wide and looked at all the data points that we might be able to get. Then from there, we want to think about what key pieces of data we can collect from the users that can help us narrow and filter suggested products and services. So the sky's really the limit here, but the ones that we tend to keep coming to over and over are industry, user role, and then browsing or purchasing history. So last little thing here, it's always good to set expectations. So some methods of personalization are pretty hands-off, especially when you have a big pool of products. And let's say you're using an AI recommendation engine. You might do some work up front, and then you might not have to handhold it very much, right? It's kind of doing the work for you. That's the glory of AI. But when you don't have that big pool of products and you have more of just like a marketing site, and maybe you're trying to sell people on a small set of services, if you're going to personalize, it might take more manual content work that's crafted by hand. So for example, say you have 4 industries, primary industries that you serve. You might have to create up to 4 different versions of a call to action to target each user's industry. And if you end up adding another factor into that formula, so to say, like user's role, then you have up to 16, 4 times 4 different combinations to account for. And you may not have to, account for all 16 and every which way you want to personalize, but you have to factor that in potentially and make sure that you get buy-in from either your content folks or your client if they're building content, and make sure they're ready for the amount of extra writing that might take. Okay, so probably the most important section of this talk is how do we get it right, and how do we avoid a how moment? There are definitely lots of benefits that personalization can provide to you and your users, but there are so many ways that it can go wrong, like really wrong. So how do we make sure that personalization is helping and not hurting? Got a few easy do's and don'ts for you. So first one, don't use personalization without a purpose. It's definitely not a time to just jump on the bandwagon. If you don't have a real business case and user case after going through those previous exercises, just don't do it, at least not yet. So do thoughtfully consider the unique trade-offs and benefits to your users. It's super important to get it right so users don't get creeped out or feel trapped. And speaking of being trapped, don't do it. You need to make sure that people have a clear and quick exit strategy. People will get frustrated super quickly if they don't. So definitely give them a clear way to opt out. And if you want to take things to the next level, which I recommend, it's really nice to give users ways to influence or change personalization and kind of crossing to that realm of customization. And then it's also really nice to make it clear when personalization is happening. I think the very first real live case of personalization that I noticed was on the WP Engine site. And they had on the homepage, maybe halfway down, select box where you could select your role, and it was something like developer, project manager, business owner maybe. And I remember being really hesitant to change that because I had no clue what it was going to change on the website. And so I think I didn't use it because they just didn't make it clear, like, is it just localized to that one block or component, or was it going to change a lot of things, and would I be missing out on the full context of what they offer? So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Don't let users get bored from a shallow pool of content. A very real risk of personalization is creating an echo chamber. I'm sure we've all seen that on our social media platforms and in other spaces. Even, the big giants still aren't getting this right all the time. Users definitely don't want to see the same thing over and over again. So do tune your algorithm to show users something outside of their comfort zones. One of the easiest ways to do that is to incorporate some new and trending items, but you also have to find the balance with that too. I feel like over the last month or two on a social media platform that I won't name, it keeps serving me content about the same trendy celebrity over and over again, even though I don't really follow celebrities on my social media platforms. And I've even marked it to not show me that content again, and yet it keeps giving me that same person over and over again. And I get that the world is obsessed with this person, but I just want my cat memes and cute babies, right? I know there's a lot of that on the internet, so just give me what I want, please. Last do and don't here is don't use a blanket algorithm. Some topics are sensitive and private, and it's truly best to avoid those, especially things in the medical space. So you definitely do want to fine-tune your algorithm for any of those specific situations. And thinking about privacy, making sure that you're protecting sensitive areas and things where it matters most. So personal example for me, as I mentioned, I have a toddler, which means at some point I was pregnant, right? Thankfully, I was working remotely when I was pregnant, but I can just imagine how easy it would have been for a coworker to lean over my shoulder when I happened to have a social media platform up, or just did a Google search and there were ads on the side. Because the minute I searched anything related to pregnancy, all of my ads everywhere were pregnant, pregnant, pregnant all the time. And in fact, I still get them. I'm sure I saw one just yesterday. So that's been following me around for years, even though I'm no longer pregnant. And I hate to take this to a dark place, but these are the kinds of things we need to think about. I'm not sure if you knew, but 1 in 4 women have a miscarriage. I was lucky enough not to have that happen. But can you imagine having had that happen, and then the internet is serving you ads for years and years about pregnancy, something that you didn't get to have, or a baby you didn't get to keep. So these things are really important, and you want to think about all of those edge cases to make sure that you're accounting for that kind of thing, and not putting people in a bad place. Okay, so to end things off here, I just want to share some simple examples of personalization in marketing sites. We've talked a lot about personalization in e-commerce, where there is obviously a lot of value, but I want to show how you can do this on a smaller scale when you don't have that large pool of data to use AI on. So first example is for OMB. They are a bank here in Springfield, and they came to us looking for a best-in-class user experience with smart and seamless conversion funnels. They are one of those clients that came to us knowing they wanted personalization, but without any specific ideas about how to make it come to life. And so our team thought about the best way to do that. And I will definitely credit our design and marketing teams for championing this idea. But we decided to go in the direction of a quiz. So their primary conversion point is someone signing up for an account online, but the bank's systems behind the scene didn't have a good way for us to kind of hook into that and do something custom for them. So we went in the direction of creating a little quiz that we could use to help people find their way to products, and then also use some of that data for personalization throughout the site. So I'm going to show you the steps of the quiz. First, we gather name, and then we also gather their identity type. So today I'm looking for banking services. The options there are business or personal. And when we get that data, we store it in a cookie, so we can use it later for personalization. Next up is just digging into their needs a little bit more. So asking if they want a checking account, a savings account, or a loan. And this also gets stored as a cookie, and we think of this as the product interest. So from there, we show a little bit more about the options that OMB has available. And this serves two purposes. One, it does a really good job of showcasing all the things that the bank has to offer. And then it also helps us get to the results page and generate a recommendation for a specific product that a user can start with. And then in this case, us and the client didn't want to be super pushy, so we optionally allowed them to enter an email address, and with the bait of getting their emails, their results emailed to them. So from there, we use the identity that they selected and the interest to personalize some content. This screenshot shown here is a call to action pretty high up on the bank's homepage. And you can see the language is pretty generic, just showcasing a lot of different products that they offer. And then we point them to the quiz that I showed you previously to see if we can point them in a better direction. But when I have taken the quiz and I selected that my interest was in personal banking services, we then change this content and tailor it to be specific about products that are for personal and don't have to do with businesses. So I'll show you a little bit about what this looks like in the CMS. This is what OMB Bank has the ability to work with, and it's a flexible system where they can personalize content throughout the site. We call this a smart content block. So in Craft CMS, we use a plugin called Neo to allow users to build content in this block-based approach, which allows the perfect pairing of consistency and flexibility. And so what you see here is an example of the one block type that we give them. This smart content block allows you to add any number of instance child blocks underneath. And so you can see here, the first one is for all users, the second one is for individuals, and the third for business owners. We'll dig into that a little deeper. We also give them the ability to customize content based on the combination of identity and interest or just a single factor. But in this case, we're just keeping it simple and just changing content based on individuals or business owners. Definitely want to pause and give credit to my talented teammate Cornelius, who developed this and came up with a really simple and elegant solution. So next, digging into the code a little bit. The first two lines here, we're just grabbing the identity and interest data from the user's cookies. These next 4 lines are just a little bit specific to Craft CMS and Twig, really just getting the fields and the columns ready for our query. And then the magic is really happening in just a few lines here, lines 10 through 16. So what we're doing is getting those child instance blocks where the chosen identity matches the cookie or is just null, and then also where the chosen interest matches the cookie or is null. And then this sorting on lines 13 through 16 are helping us prioritize which ones we should show, or which one rather. We prioritize identity over interests, and then we also prioritize instances that have a value at all versus being null. And then we just pick the first one, and the rest of the code here is basically just importing whatever content, which are in the form of additional blocks entered by the user. So really pretty simple under the hood. Okay, moving on to another example. This time we've got a few things for JMark, another one of our clients and a local tech organization here. So this is an example of dark mode, which is a customization feature we give to the users. They have a pretty technical audience, given that they're an IT company, and so we thought that would add a sense of fun and interest for their users, just to be able to flip between light and dark mode, and they have a sun and moon icon in the nav that lets them do that at any time. And of course, we save their preference in a cookie, so anytime they come back to the site on that same device, they see it in the right mode. So we did also implement this smart content approach for JMark, and we took a little bit of a different approach. So for them, we have a two-step form, not quite a quiz, but a little bit more lightweight. And we gather their role, their industry, and then their need. And then on the second step, we allow them, if they want to gather their name and email, and then send that data off to HubSpot so they can manage the leads from there. So something that we did to build on our OMB concept was we after they submit the form, we give them a very clear way to change. If they enter their information and wait, what's happening here? I feel confused. It's very obvious that they can change their personalization. And then this second screenshot on the right is an example of that. We also have the personalized link in the nav, so again, users can go back and change it at any time. And one of the options in the drop down there is to deselect the industry, so they can opt out at any time. We also did some user testing recently for a new client on a website we haven't launched yet. And users were super interested in the personalization features. It was set up pretty similarly to this. I think 9 out of 10 people were super excited about it and said that they actually wanted to see more personalization than we had put in the examples of user testing. But one thing that we did find from that user research is that drop-down method of opting out might not even be enough. So one thing that we modified in this new design was to just have a very clear I want to opt out link, just to make it as easy as possible and really give people that quick and easy out. So last slide here, this shows the CMS side of JMark's smart content solution. For them, we decided to keep it really simple and just allow them to personalize or change content based on industry. And then they have a few blocks that they can change for that too. All right. Just want to wrap up by calling out some of the resources that I used to build this presentation. I found a lot of really good data from the Nielsen-Norman group, which are those first two links. And if you don't know about them, they're just have amazing UX research and info about all kinds of things. So definitely recommend that. And then a few other things here that highlight some different aspects of what I presented, as well as some more examples. And I will save this deck as a PDF and put it in the devs channel if you want to dig into this anymore. Any questions? Thank you. All right, go.
And I'm going to ask this because you said the word nefarious earlier. You didn't want to, but first thing I went to was, I think, personalization. I'm sure everybody in the room has had an experience where you're not even Google searching, and your phone sits down and you speak about something, and next thing you know, it's coming up in your ads.
Yes.
So, do you have any comments on that type of phenomenon that's taking place?
Yeah, so for the people watching via stream, the question was, they said that I'm sure everybody, and I agree, has had experience where their phone is down and they're just like talking about something, and then the next second it's showing in ads everywhere. So I think there's two things in here. One, the first question is, are our phones actually listening to us, right? And I've listened to a couple of different takes on this, and generally speaking, they didn't see any evidence that it's actually listening to us with our microphones without our consent. And there are quite a few protections on phones these days that, unless it's the government, I doubt Google and Facebook are using our microphones without our permission. It's possible, because anything's possible, but not likely. But it's interesting because people just don't even process or realize how much data they're giving away all the time with every Google search. And another interesting thing, too, was with Facebook, they're making connections and recommendations based on your network, even. So it might not even be about what you have done or what you have put into Facebook or Google. It might be about what someone you know or are close to has done. And so I think when you realize like the depth of the tracking going on in all these apps, think about all the things I just said that you might consider, and they're doing this like times 1,000. And so some of this can be okay. Some of it can cross the line, right? And that's where I think I mentioned it several times, that you have to be super cautious about it not being creepy. And ideally, I forgot to call this out, but in the JMark example, we had a checkbox at the end of the form, that where they consented to saying, we're going to use this data to personalize, right? Like, we're storing this data. So the more that we can do as good citizens and good developers and good designers to be really clear about what data we're collecting and how we'll use it, I think that will make the internet a better, less creepy place. Good question.
So,
Yeah.
for companies that you're working with to get data from, things like that, how do you go about choosing which ones you're going to work with? Or
Yeah, so the question is, how do you go about choosing what data you're going to work with? There's no just simple, easy answer. I mean, generally kind of following the exercises and the principles that I outlined originally, by starting with what is most important to the business and what do you think is most important to your users. If you don't have a good sense of that, one thing you could consider is connecting with your users. You'd be surprised at how much feedback you could get from even just 5 or 10 conversations with actual users or people that kind of look like your users. Mm-hmm. Did you have a question too?
I was just going to tack on that when you collect data nowadays, even with like a simple contact form, people are starting to actually sue if you don't show how you're going to use that data, like a policy or anything like that. If you don't have that, they'll, like, some people will sue, and it's not by instance, it's by user.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And actually, my coworker recommended that I add info about it, but I didn't have time to include it. So the comment was that some companies are being sued by users who are collecting data and not appropriately saying how they're going to use it. So there's really a pretty simple fix for that at a basic level, which is having privacy policy and terms of use on your website. You've probably seen them a million times at the very bottom of the footer of websites. One tool that we like to use is Termly, because those things are a lot of legal mumbo jumbo, and it's hard to know what you should put there. And Termly is a really good resource to kind of help generate baseline stuff if you don't have anything. That's something that we use for our clients. And yep.
I use Termagant. They also do
Yeah.
policies in terms of service.
Cool. Yeah. So Termageddon was another recommendation there. What else? Yeah.
What are some common forms of data that aren't obvious to users that they don't realize they're giving up?
So the question is, what are some common forms of data that users don't realize they're giving up? And I'd be interested in anyone else's ideas out here too, if anything comes to mind. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes people forget that anytime you sign up for something with your email address and your phone number, people get hacked. And if you've ever had a million spam calls, it's probably because somebody that you gave your phone number to just signing up for a service or entering form data, it's probably because that data got hacked at some point, and then it goes out on the dark web, and now anyone has your number to spam call. And there's only so much you can do about that, because even big companies with good security sometimes still get hacked. But you can think about limiting who you're giving that data to. I do find that it seems like everybody requires a phone number these days when you're pretty sure they don't need to call you, and that feels really unfortunate to me, but that's kind of how things seem to be going. Oh.
Google symptoms or
Yes.
medication.
That's a really good point. So one person was saying that you give up illnesses when you Google medications, or, I mean, really anything you Google, right? You're giving to Google in a sense. So, but yeah, I think medical stuff, people don't often realize how much they might be giving away, for sure. Yeah.
People give away a ton of information all the time. If they ever fill out, like on Facebook, like, how well do you know your mom? Answer these 10 questions. And it's like, they literally give away like security questions, like, what's your mom's dog's name? It's like,
Yes.
like, that's a security question. Like, it's like, where was your mom married? Like, it's stuff like that. People just put it out there for free.
Yeah, so I definitely want to speak that into the microphone for anyone still with us on streaming, if they are. But yeah, so you see all over the place on Facebook, people just doing these viral questions like, what's your mom's middle name? Or what's your favorite color? Or what was your favorite dog's name? And these are all answers to very common security questions. And, they, in theory, could be fun, but anytime you see those kind of what do you think questions on Facebook that aren't from someone you know, I would just avoid that like the plague. That's really good, Carmen.
I think it's really funny too. You see, especially the older generations on Facebook, that they'll post the thing, I do not consent to Facebook selling my data. It's like, and people just share that all the time thinking that it's actually working. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
An actual follow-up question though, geofencing is something that's pretty popular nowadays in terms of, brick and mortar stores for marketing. The way I understand it, that's tracking your location now. Somebody walks through the fence, and now you're able to target, the specific advertisements or offers. But so could you comment on that, like your location privacy and how users can be tracked, and their data collected from those types of resources?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know enough about it. but I probably should look into it. Yeah. The question was about geofencing and just kind of commenting on that kind of data collection.
So in the getting it right section,
Mhm.
you talked about like don't show the same thing over and over again. How do you determine like does that change based on your user base? Or like something if you're on an Amazon site, there's a million different things in front of you all the time, and I'm sure that's something they personalize for their users. Or like a bank or something like that, they might like. How do you really go about determining how many times you're going to show that to someone, like a content of some sort?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The question was, how exactly do you go about not showing the same things to the same people over and over? And I don't have a good answer. Again, I'm sorry that I've all of your questions I don't have an easy answer to. Yeah, I think it'd just be a matter of testing in your use case and kind of just thinking of creative ways to mix it up. But yeah, sorry, I don't have a better answer.
I do have a follow up with that though.
Sure.
So with the companies you work with the companies you work with, you how long are you working with them so that way you can get a good like data set, so that way you can be like, okay, we're gonna start with this personalization, and then do you just like start modifying over a year, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, so our website process involves an upfront design process, and we really like to start our projects with research if we can. So we tend to spend a lot of time with our clients upfront designing, usually several months in that process through different iterations. And sometimes, we've done user testing in that phase too to try to really nail down our thought experience or experiments. But after that, it kind of depends on the client, but we might, if we have a retainer with them, we might be looking at things and refining over time for a long time. With Cox Health is one of our longest standing clients, and we have a really big retainer with them. And so I think I've been working with them for close to 10 years. We're in the process of building a new website for them now. So yeah, I mean, it can be anywhere from that initial website build, usually clients that are paying enough to think about personalization. We might be designing and building the site for 6 months to a year, sometimes even more, depending on how quickly they can get feedback to us. And then with clients like Cox Health, we might be working with them for 10 years or more afterward. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, everyone. You've been a great crowd.